The Laird family rallied at what had once been their home for 36 years. Their elderly parents left the house on Sunday for a holiday in Cobar. At 2 o'clock this morning they were told about the fire. This evening they'll return to a charred ruin. The house had recently been renovated with new interiors and vinyl cladding outside. The family members say they fear that the site may be almost too much for their parents to bear.
My father's got a heart condition and my mother's nerves aren't the best, so I think they're going to take it pretty bad.
Is there anything left at all?
No, not really. Just about everything's destroyed. Got a couple of photos, that's about all.
The Lairds are well known in the Ellamore Vale area. The family believes the local community is sharing their distress at this disastrous start to the new year. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Ranked number 6 in the world in doubles, Pate only showed glimpses of his talent. Steve grabbed an early break and held to lead 3-love. And followed up with backhand and forehand winners to take the set 6-2.
Brilliant cross-court forehand by Charlie Steve.
Pate's serve was online early in the second set. But Steve again broke the American. And the inevitable came with Steve winning 6-2, 6-2. In contrast, the Ivan Lendl-Wally Masur match was highly entertaining, with Lendl on top early. Then Masur replied, breaking the next 3 Lendl serves. Lendl broke back but then fell into service problems again, allowing Masur to take the first set 6-3. Stung into action, Lendl hit his straps, while Masur kept up the pressure with touch. Lendl's serve began to improve and with a lift in confidence was able to level the match at a set all. Masur again broke Lendl to open the final set, but immediately Lendl levelled. Lendl played superb tennis to stretch his lead to 5-2 before Masur fought back to level at 5-all. The match was forced into a tie-break and Lendl got his nose in front with great play. And with a chance to grab a match point himself, Masur went missing. And on his third attempt to win the match, Lendl was home.
Days stop in the town and locals claim the service as it stands isn't good enough.
Coming over the station at 5:20 to 5:24 to.
When you are as successful as Ivan Lendl, you can try almost anything, including this $10,000 sprint car. Although the car wasn't exactly made for his athletic frame, Ivan managed to squeeze into the machine, don the racing gear and cause the dust to fly on the motordrome track. Well, that's what everyone hoped would happen, but Ivan preferred to take it easy, proving that as a sprint car driver he makes a great tennis player.
It was lots of fun. It's just, I think you got to be crazy to do it for a living.
Crazy he isn't, but local driver Reg Haynes is, and this is how it's supposed to be done.
With injuries to several key players, Newcastle's Peter Doohan filled the gap and was all fired up in front of his home crowd. And Davis Cup hero Wally Masur showed plenty of class of his own to run down everything to win the match. In the final of the Classic, Lendl broke the Steep serve in the opening game in a cool fashion. And using his power to manoeuvre his opponent all over the court, Lendl controlled the set to win at 6-4. It was Lendl at nearly his peak, but Steve made him work for every point. The big serve was working to perfection, while as confidence mounted, low percentage shots were a formality. Lendl again broke Steve to lead 5-2 and brought up match points soon after.
With an election tipped as imminent, Member for Port Stephens Bob Martin admits his seat will be hard to clinch again, but not impossible.
I've lost the chance to win like I had. My first election I won by 90 votes. The by-election was better than that, but now I'm going to have to work a lot harder.
Mr Martin has lost the Labor stronghold of Stockton and part of Mayfield to the electorate of Newcastle and gained Hawks Nest, Tea Gardens and Raymond Terrace North. Although perhaps to his disadvantage, Mr Martin believes placing Raymond Terrace in the one electorate is a good idea.
It makes sense. While it politically doesn't favour me, it makes sense to put a town completely in the one electorate and not dividing it.
Mr Martin sees only one way of retaining the seat of Port Stephens.
I'll be down working my backside off to make sure that we get the message across.
A team comprising of Arne Lendl, Charlie Steve and Peter Doohan took on John Newcombe, Tony Roach and Kiwi Chris Lewis in a singles tie-break shootout, and the winner wasn't known until the final game. No doubt many had come to see the old firm of Newcombe and Roach, and they showed touches of past glories. Doohan beat Roach 8-6, 7-4, but Newt gained revenge 7-3, 8-6 against Devan. Then it was time for the oldies to put their feet up while Charlie Steve the pupil upset his coach Chris Lewis in 3. It was then up to Tony Roach to level the series, his opponent, his pupil of Arne Lendl, and Roachy had the crowd in the palm of his hand. All tied up and in the deciding doubles, Lendl and Doohan opened brilliantly. A bit of luck and Newt made it 3-all in the tie-break. And with understanding that took them to 5 Wimbledon doubles titles, they got the advantage. Ahead 6-4, it was match and championship point to the veterans.
This is where an aerial navigation exercise ended for the Piper Warrior from the Civil Air Training Academy at Cessnock. Its 19-year-old Malaysian trainee pilot Su Poo Hung and 35-year-old instructor Timothy Jones had flown from Cessnock to Tamworth and were returning via Scone when they were reportedly hemmed in by storm fronts. With limited visibility and only 200 metres altitude, the instructor opted for a landing on a gravel road at the Bayswater Power Station. The plane came close to high-voltage power lines before touching down in a storage depot. Both wingtips were shorn off as it passed through a wire fence and careered along the road. It smashed through timber signposts, losing a wing and a wheel before crashing end over into a ditch. Its crew escaped the crushed cabin and raised the alarm with security officers at a nearby gatehouse. Officials from the Academy inspected the wreck this morning and declared the $60,000 plane a write-off.
"97 netballers from Newcastle, the Hunter Valley, Sydney and the Blue Mountains have been invited to take part in the week-long camp under the watchful eyes of Margaret Corbett, Fiona Duncan, Sandra Dan and Wendy McTaggart. And at the new Hunter International Hockey Centre at Broadmeadow, 50 youngsters are improving their skills with the guidance of representative players Robin Leggett and Judy Lang. For some participants, it's the second summer camp that they have attended, and there's no doubt the week's intensive training is paying off.
I have seen some of the girls playing over the last 12 months and some have shown remarkable improvement, yes.
As team sports, netball and hockey rely on understanding and friendship as much as individual skills.
It's wonderful. The kids really love it. They all come really enthusiastic. Just being together, I think, is really good for them too. They learn off each other as well as the coaches. Mainly enjoyment and fun, I think, especially for the younger ones, is number one. And skill development, I think, is the most important things for the week, to come out of the week. So they'll continue on next year and use the things that we've taught them. I think that's really important.
The Hunter Academy of Sport will continue its camps in various sports right throughout 1991, and for an organisation that had a checkered beginning, it is now kicking a few goals.
It's really happening and the kids are really getting the value out of it, not only in hockey but in all sports. But in my sport, yes, we can see the benefits of having the Academy of Sport here.
A group of regular Leggy Point surfers were making the most of the big swells rolling in when 37-year-old Paul Davis of Cahaiba misjudged a tube ride and was hammered by the lip of the wave onto rocks just below the surface. Fortunately, his brother Leon and another surfing mate Bill Dobbins were watching from their boards.
When I seen him sort of come through the bowl, he got sucked over, and then we talked about it.
Yeah, we saw him get hit by the second one as well.
And we've seen him floundering in off the rocks there, and I said, I'm gone, see you, I'll go and get him.
So you had to swim in, did you?
Oh yeah, I paddled onto a wave and surfed it all the way into here, and then by that time he was just in here and just dragged him up on the sand.
Ambulance officers at the scene said the injured surfer had movement of his arms and legs, but he was flown to hospital for treatment of a badly bruised back. Knowing access to the beach was difficult, the Leggy Point Board Riders Club has actively supported the Angel One appeal, raising almost $2,000. Club members today said they'll be organising another function to say thanks to the rescue service. Jim Sullivan, NBN News.
Port Stephens is crowded with pleasure boats of all shapes and sizes. It's peak season on the water, and the authorities were determined to avoid any repeat of last year's tragic boating accidents, which claimed 6 lives. Extra officers were called in from Sydney to check boats leaving ramps as well as on the water.
Doing a routine safety check of your vessel.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, could you show me your life jackets?
And, with only a few exceptions, found most people carrying adequate life jackets and safety backups like anchors, oars and bailing buckets.
The safe boating message is definitely getting through in Port Stephens. We've had an outstanding result and people are very safety conscious.
An information van was set up at Halifax Park and was swamped with interest. Hundreds of people sat for boat licences and brought in safety gear for inspection. The Waterways Authority's attention will shift to Lake Macquarie this weekend, with the information van set up at Swansea on Saturday and Crowders Bay Park on Sunday.
When every day begins and ends with a blood sugar test and insulin injections, it's hard for children with diabetes not to feel a little apart from other children. That's why volunteers from Kids Camp Incorporated take young diabetes sufferers on special summer camps, where they can be with other children in the same unique predicament. For the first time in almost half a century, the camp is being hosted here in the Hunter Valley at St Joseph's Boarding School. Almost 40 volunteers, including nurses, doctors and former Kids Camp members, on hand to help the youngsters aged between 8 and 12 years, who quickly learn to come to terms with a lifelong task of regulating their blood sugar levels. Even morning tea time is an occasion to reinforce the importance of measuring each mouthful.
They have to eat portions of food. A portion is equal to 15 grams of carbohydrate. A slice of bread is a portion, a piece of fruit is a portion. So some children are eating up to 5 portions at a meal time, so they need to eat 3 pieces of fruit and a sandwich, things like that.
So they actually have to control it that closely.
That's right. It's important that they eat the correct amount of food for the amount of insulin that they've been taking.
It's a demanding and important routine, but the children find the chore easier just knowing they're not the only ones.
You think that you're the only kid that in the whole world that's got diabetes, but you come here and see all different kids and you know that other kids have got diabetes.
35 youngsters will spend a week participating in a range of activities, including swimming, tennis and cricket. Today's itinerary included a morning of 10-pin bowling. Another 34 young people will take their places at the summer camp from Saturday. Organisers say they're pleased with the facilities available at Lochinvar and they plan to host the camp here again next summer. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
For nurses and aid workers alike, the war is ever present, a constant obstacle to the relief operation. This teenager, shot by a malicious sniper, is brought to a UNICEF plane where British doctor Susie Cohen administers emergency care. When not attending the war wounded, Susie tries to continue the wider long-term relief programme, caring for sick children, training local health workers. But now even that work is under threat. Aid agencies are beginning to withdraw their staff from the war zones, no longer able to guarantee their safety.
There have been bombing in parts of southern Sudan by the government, and some of my colleagues have been involved in that. And so it makes you very anxious every time you hear a plane going overhead. You worry that they are going to bomb.
But war now threatens millions, not just those in the front line. For farmer Severino, the combination of war and drought means he's been unable to manage his 2-acre plot. Normally, he harvests enough for 12 months. This year, it fed his family for just 3 days. What they do use are these husks, hard, dried kernels with almost no nutritional value. Even to get these, the children have to walk for 5 hours. And when that supply is gone, there'll be nothing until the next harvest in 9 months' time. Here in the south, the first victims of famine have already begun to appear. The old, the young, the sick, those who have no defence against disease once their frail bodies are starved of nutrition. In Capoeira Hospital, 80% of the children are sick because they can't get enough to eat. Here, illnesses like tuberculosis and diarrhoea can and do kill. Aid workers can only help so many.
You can see the effect of malnutrition on these children. They're very, very emaciated. You can see the inflammation of their joints. Just a couple of days ago, this little boy couldn't even move. I mean, he was just lying totally lethargic, and this little girl was the same way. These children were sent to us from the medical center in Nasir by the medical assistant there, who seems overwhelmed with cases like this.
There is no doubt that the flood of children will continue, and it will increase, because the famine will spread and because there's no sign of an end to the war.
The proposed Anchorage Port Stephens development has had the fine-tooth comb treatment over the past 3 years. It's met public, council and environmental scrutiny, altered its design to win approval and is all but ready to start taking shape. A $25 million complex with 81 luxury rooms and a 90-berth marina will nestle along the foreshore. That is, if the boats can get to it. The seabed in front of the development is classed as unoccupied Crown land and claimable under the Aboriginal Land Rights Act.
I can't for the life of me see their claim is all below the high water mark, and if I could see what benefit they could get by having land granted to them below the mean high water mark, I'd probably support them and then ask them for some access for navigational purposes to allow our development to proceed, but I can't see if there's any value at all for them.
The Warramai Local Aboriginal Land Council has already made a bid for the area, which was rejected by the Minister for Lands, but now it's appealing against that decision.
We believe that if our claim is successful, that land then will remain as it always has been for the use of the general public.
The Land Council represents about 80 people, but some Aboriginals in the area disagree with its course of action, favouring the development and jobs it might attract. But there is the risk of division within the Warramai community.
The time has come when jobs, the cost of jobs to the environment has to be weighed up.
The issue will be heard in the Land and Environment Court in early February. A win for the Warramais could sink the marina.
If we're talking about development of any major aspect, I doubt that we would agree to any major change to that particular piece of land.
The handful of young Army cadets from Gunnedah had their numbers bolstered by local RSL members as they completed the 75th anniversary reenactment of the Wallabies Recruitment March. Over the past month, the marches have covered 450 kilometres and 27 country towns between Walgett and Newcastle. The original Wallabies March was one of a dozen recruitment campaigns carried out in Australia to find fresh soldiers to feed the battlefields of the Great War. The Wallabies March gathered about 250 new recruits. 40 never returned. Today's marches recalled those casualties, laying wreaths at the Newcastle cenotaph. March sponsor Bruce Ruxton later speculated on the growing possibility of Australians again going to foreign battlefields. He says Australians should be involved in a Gulf conflict.
We're supportive of the Prime Minister and his stand on the Gulf crisis. I wouldn't like to see Australia as being the only country in the world out of it.
Organiser and march leader, Newcastle historian David Dial says the reenactment of the Wallabies March should serve as an inspiration to modern Australians who are greatly changed.
I think people's attitudes have changed. They put more importance on trivial things. They only care about probably flash cars or flash homes or colour TVs and videos.
But Bruce Ruxton believes we'd still answer the call if the nation was in danger. And while Saddam Hussein isn't Adolf Hitler, he says Iraq's territorial ambitions must be curbed.
And I think that unless he is curtailed and given a punch in the nose, he could go on to do worse things.